So what we're going to do here is talk about the 360 images and storyline. I'll assume you've never used it, so I kind of set some context. But what we had in the community is somebody wanted to create a scavenger hunt using the 360 images. And so what they wanted to do is they could only, find one thing, and then once they found it, they'd go find the second thing and then find the third thing. And so we'll look at how the 360 image feature works, and then how we had to kind of modify working with that feature to get what that user wanted to do. So here's a 360 image, and if you wanted to play around with this, I've got the file, you can download it, and then in the folder I added a couple of practice images so you can play around with this idea. So by default, you have your 360 image in here, and then when you look at the navigation for the image, so I can't remember if I put something on here yet. So let's just go ahead and we'll put a couple of hotspots because that's what they had here. So we have a hotspot, right? And you can see when I get a hotspot, I get a label. And now if you're doing a scavenger hunt, and let's put another hotspot over here. I don't want all this stuff to be visible because the idea is I'm looking for it, right? So what she originally had was a few different hotspots. So we'll just have 3 different hotspots here. So the first thing I got to think about is when I'm working with this is I don't want the labels to be visible. So when you're working with a 360 image, you can turn the label off up here, right? And so now that gets rid of the label. The other thing is I don't want the hotspots to be visible. So if I come over here to the interaction, you've got some options for hotspots. Before we do that, let's go ahead and preview this just so you can see what it looks like as we built it. So you can see the hotspots are visible, right? So you can turn those things on and off, which is what we're going to do. This one doesn't have that label anymore. This one does have the label. I don't have anything in there. But the other thing you'll notice is down here, it's telling me that there's 3 objects on the screen. And so then I have to click through, and we'll click through, right? So now it's tracking what I'm doing. So what she wanted to do is she wanted to have the tracking, but she really only wanted you to be able to do one at a time. So we need to address that as well. So let's go ahead and turn off the labels on all the hotspots. So if I come back to this hotspot, I want to make sure the label's off. And if I come to this hotspot, I want to make sure the label's off. Let me test something here. So I got the hotspot. Can I do? Okay, so I can copy and duplicate this hotspot, and then I don't have to worry about turning the labels off. So that's a shortcut in there. I wasn't sure if that was going to work. So I copied the hotspot. Once I set it up, I copied it and then I pasted it, and then I don't have to go and turn all the labels off. So anyway, you have these hotspots, and then the other thing with the hotspots, you don't want them to show. So you'd go to the interaction and you see you've got your hotspot option up here, and then you can see it says reveal hotspots or the pulsing. We're going to go ahead and turn that off. So now if I preview this, I don't see the hotspots, right? I do see that I have 4 items here down at the bottom, but I don't see the hotspots. So now I'm getting this stuff that's tracking what I've done with the, I don't know where the hotspots are at. So what we want to do is get rid of that. Now what she wanted to do is she didn't want the progress indicator, but she wanted to only allow one thing at a time. So right over here is where you see the progress indicator. So if we turn that off and we preview this, now, this is again using everything out of the box. So if I click on a hotspot, you can see there's no progress indicator on the bottom, but I still can click on multiple hotspots. And so she didn't want that. So she decided to use the guided tour feature here. So right now we're in free navigation. So if we go to guided tour, the way this works is if we preview this, it gives me, because it's the guided tour, it gives me this indicator that I've got 1 to 4, which wouldn't be bad for her in her case. So I click on it because, you know, telling the person that they've done something is okay. But you have to click the arrow button to go then to the next one, right? And then you have to click the arrow button to do that. So it's kind of an awkward thing. And most people wouldn't use the guided tour with a hotspot because the idea of the hotspot is an invisible button. If you were using markers, for example, let's just change these hotspots to markers here, right? Let me add a couple markers in here. So if I we can actually change these hotspots to markers too. So switch type, see how it says switch type up here. And so we're gonna switch type. So if I have the guided tour and I have markers, because again, hotspots are invisible, so the implication is that the user's looking for something. So it's kind of hard to do a guided tour. So if you use a guided tour, you're generally like featuring things. So if I look at the guided tours, again, the way it's built out of the box, where's my, did I not save this? Anyway, if I had the markers on here, the guided tour would move this to the different markers, but I'm not going to waste a lot of time trying to figure out why that didn't happen. Oh, it's because I still have the hotspot on here. Let me just change that one. All right, now let's preview this. All right, so see, you can see I've got a marker, and then I click in there, but when I do the guided tour, it's going to move it from marker to marker. When you use a hotspot out of the box, it doesn't work that way because the hotspots are hidden, and so the idea is that the person's looking for something versus you guiding them through there. So it's kind of you have these cool features, right? You've got the free navigation, you've got the guided tour, but when you want to create a scavenger hunt, what she wanted to do is have one object, and you would find that object, you'd get feedback or collect it, and then you'd go and find the next object. But there wasn't a way to do that easily. The guided tour works, but you have this kind of awkward, click the hotspot, look, click, then you have to click this navigation button, which wasn't very intuitive from the experience of doing that. So then I was playing around with ideas, and so this is the idea I came up with, and I added a few extra things here in this demo. Let me get out of here, and then I'll show you how to build this. So here's the slide, and I added a tracker on there so we can visually see it. And if you want to know how to do that, I created a link. We did that in a previous webinar. So here's a tracker to let me know I'm collecting things since I'm not using the feature in the block. So we're going to get started, and then I can just go around, and I'm supposed to find something. Now I can only find one object. So even though I have like 6 or 7 different things you can find, at this point, it's like a scavenger hunt. Go find object 1, and I believe that's the lamp. So I find my object 1, I get my feedback. Here it's tracking it. I'm going to go to the next object, right, which is the door. Click on the door, get my feedback, it's tracking it, and then I can go to the next object. So what I did is I basically created this interaction as a series of layers, and I'm just duplicating the interaction with the images. So when we actually look at this here, let me expand the layer panel because my monitor is a little smaller here. If you look at the layers here, I have on these layers just duplicated the image. So basically, you're only interacting with one image here, then you're going to get your feedback, and then you're going to come back. Like once you click the next object, it's going to take you to the next image, and then you get your feedback, and it's going to take you to the next image. And it works pretty well. So it's pretty easy to build. It works well. You can control everything the way you want to. There is some nuance. I'm not going to cover the progress meter thing. I like I said, I have a link to that, how we did that. We did that in a previous quick tip. But I'll kind of show you the nuance when we're working with this type of interaction if you want to build a scavenger hunt like this. So let's go to this one. We're just going to build everything from scratch. I'm going to do like 2 or 3 things. So the first thing we're going to do is we want to create a layer, we want to put our images on the layer and not on the actual slide. So I'm going to come over here down to the layers, I'm going to create a new layer, and we'll call this object 1, right? And then I know when I do object 1, I want to provide some feedback. So I'm going to go ahead and create another layer, and we'll just call this one object 1 feedback. And so then that's going to be my feedback layer. Now I know on the feedback layer, I'm going to have some feedback. I'm just going to we'll just insert a caption box here, and then we'll insert a button to continue. All right, and then I know that object 1's feedback is going to go to object 2. So I'm going to go ahead and create our first object, and then I can just duplicate those layers, so it's a lot faster for me. So on this object 1, what I want to do is insert the image. So I'm going to come up here to insert, and then I'll go to 360 images. And if you don't have any 360 images, I went ahead and added some in that download for you, so you can play around with this. I'm just going to go ahead and insert this office picture. So now I have my 360 image. And then inside the 360 image, I'm going to edit that. I'm going to get everything set up and build the first one the way I want it to be built, and then we'll duplicate it, and then so it saves me some time. So I'll put we'll make the first image the TV screen. So I'm going to go ahead and put a hotspot on here. We'll draw it over the TV screen. If you want to, you can grab these anchor points and make it very precise, but we'll keep it this way. Again, I don't want to have any labels and all of that, so I'm going to go ahead up here and turn off the label. And then I don't want the hotspot to be visible, so I'm going to go up to the interaction tab, and I'm going to turn off the hotspot visibility. So now basically I just have one hotspot, right? So if we preview this, I can move this around. Here's my hotspot. Now what do I want to do with the hotspot? What I want to do is I want to link to the feedback. I'm also going to turn off this show progress indicator. So I'm going to create a trigger up here. What do I want to do? When do I want to do it? So what I want to do, where's my trigger panel here? What I want to do is I want to show layer. And which layer? Object 1 feedback layer when the user clicks on the hotspot. And that's going to go to that layer. And so I'm going to hit save and close. I saw somebody ask about the 360 images. We don't have any 360 images in the content library just because what tends to happen is with the 360 images is like this, is generic stock images really don't work in most contexts, but you can do a search. If you need some generic stuff, you can just go to some of those free image sites, or like I use Deposit Photos, and there's all sorts of them. I also have a link to a site where you can use AI to generate some 360 images for you, and you can find that in that resource page as well. All right, so what we've got now is we've got our first image, and then it goes to feedback. And so we're going to go ahead and do a couple more. And so I'm going to duplicate this layer. So I'm just make sure I duplicate it, because that means I won't have to redo everything. We're going to do object 2, right? And then we're going to duplicate the object feedback. And we're going to come over here and let's just do object 2 feedback. And so what we want to do is make sure object 1 is going to link to object 1 feedback. We want to make sure this continue button is going to link to object 2. So we're going to show layer object 2 when the user clicks on that button. And then when they're in object 2, now we're going to go back into edit image, and we're going to move this hotspot, and let's just make it the leather chair, the next one. And again, you can fine tune all this stuff, move it, size it, however you want to do it in there. This is good enough for us. And then we want to make this trigger go to object 2 feedback. And you can see once you pre-build it, then it's just duplicating and modifying. It's very simple to do that. And then we could go to object 2 feedback, and then this would continue. So let's see what we have. We're going to preview this slide. It should work unless I wasn't paying attention. Why are we not seeing anything? We put things on the layer. So now what we need to do is put a trigger to show that layer. Otherwise, we're just going to get a blank slide and we don't have a way to come to the layer. I like to do a start layer. So I'm just going to go ahead and create a start layer, and we'll call it start. And that's where I might put the instructions in there. So I might do something like, we'll just say these are instructions, right? So the instructions, I'm ready to go. Let's put a button on here. And so this is my start layer. And so I click start, and then I want to go to object 1. So put a trigger on here. What do I want to do? I want to show layer object 1 when the user clicks the button. So this will be, we'll just type welcome in here so we can see that. So welcome, here are your instructions. And then let's click on the button here. Oops, my mouse is frozen. Get started. All right. So now what we want to do is on the base slide, we want that layer to show up. So let's put a trigger on here. What do I want to do? I want to show layer start when the user, when the timeline starts on this slide. So show layer start, that's our introduction, when the timeline starts on this slide. So what's going to happen is the slide loads, it's going to go to the start layer, get my information, and then I'm going to click and go to object 1. So let's go ahead. Now this should work. And what's cool about this is all a single slide, right? So get my instructions, start, got my first thing. I'm going to go ahead and what was it? It was the TV. Hey, great job, you got the TV. Let's go continue. I click, and you'll notice I'm back at this vase here rather than the TV where I was at. What was the next one? The chair. Great job, you collected the chair, click, and then it would continue from there. So there's some nuance here. So the first thing I would do is the first one, it's fine starting wherever you want to start, right? But if I clicked on the TV and it comes to this layer, and then I close that out and I go to this place, I want this to be as close as possible to where the TV is at. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to edit image. And so I came from the TV on that first one. Now I'm coming back to the second one. So what I do is change the perspective of this here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up to the interaction again up here, and I can edit my start point. So I'm going to edit my start point, and I'm just going to drag it so it's more like the TV area. And again, it's a guess because you don't know where they really were, because they might have said, oh, chair, and clicked right here rather than chair like that. But we'll go ahead and put the TV front and center, hit set. Let's do one more so we can see it with the chair, how it moves. Okay, so we're gonna do one more layer, and we're gonna create this here. Let's go ahead and duplicate this layer. This will be object 3. This will be the chair. So let's come in here, object 3. We're gonna do the chair, and let's go to picture. So we're gonna move it and just move it to the picture, right? And we need to put a new layer in here. So let me save and close this. This is why you should create all this stuff first. So we're going to duplicate this. And we're going to do object 3, feedback, and let's get rid of this stuff here. So we're going to come back to here. Let's set that trigger to object 3 feedback. And this is why titling is also important. And we'll assume everything's good here. And then now on object 2, I'm leaving object 2. I was at the TV, right? Let me see, I go TV to chair. So when I get to object 3, this is where I want to make sure I'm at the chair, because the next one is the picture. So I'm going to go up to interaction. I'm going to edit. I'm going to move it to the chair. I'm going to set it. So this should be a little bit smoother looking. Otherwise, if I don't set it, it's always going to start at that same starting point. So this will, you're still kind of taking a guess because you don't know where the person was when they did that, when they clicked. So we're going to go ahead and preview the scene slide. So get started. And I saw somebody ask why did I create a get started? You need to have a way to get to the layer. I could have just launched with that layer initially, but I figured I'd probably have to have some instructions anyway. So I could have done a start layer. I could have just put this on the base layer and just on the base slide and put the instructions and then click and then go to the layer. It really doesn't matter. I just like creating this because what I actually did in the demo, which you can look in the file, is I had it sitting on top of that image, but I don't want to go into that detail. But there's a few different ways you can do that. But we've got our get started layer. We click, I'm in here, got my TV, get my feedback. I click and see how it's kind of by the TV. Where was it? The chair. I click my feedback, and then I forgot to set the trigger on that. Let's see here. What was that? Object 2. Set to trigger for the button to show layer 3. All right. So let's preview this again. And we click start, TV, feedback. Now I'm going to go find, here's my chair, feedback, and you can see it's a little bit smoother as a movement. It would be weird to click and then always start at this point for your scavenger hunt. So you're kind of moving that around. There's a little bit more nuance to that. You can look at the demo file I built if you want to look at, some of the things I did, kind of going back to the question about why I put the start layer on this one. I won't go into all the detail of it, but on this one, you can see the start layer. You actually have the image peeking through, and I click start. And so that's kind of why I use the layer. So then it kind of has, to me, like a little bit of a cleaner look. But that's just a matter of working around with the layer properties and having the objects show up on top of each other. But you can look at that file. But the main thing is, if you want to create kind of that scavenger hunt feel, you can't really use, like the way she wanted to do it, you really couldn't use the way the default features work. But doing something like this, it's pretty simple to do, and from the user experience, it just looks like a single image as they're navigating the screen and looking for objects. Hopefully that helps. I don't know if there's any standing questions. I'll jump in and answer some of the questions when David takes over. Thanks for attending. And again, like always with these types of things, it's really not so much, are you going to use this particular tip? No, maybe. But the idea is that it lets you play around with the tools and get some kind of deeper understanding of how the different tools and features work. And to me, the advanced part of working with Storyline or any of the tools is that you know how various features work, and you can kind of combine them to kind of create the things that you need to create. So it's not always just, here's how the feature works, but it's really, here's 3 features, and if I combine these 3 features and how they work, I can kind of create something unique. So hopefully you learned something. If you're brand new, I know this might be a little bit overwhelming, but that's okay. You can always come back. You can see what we can do, and then you can come back and watch those videos at your own convenience.